Today we're going to be taking a look at the human brain, but more specifically a part of the human brain. The human brain itself would probably be regarded as the most important organ in our bodies, as it allows us to think, feel, interpret, learn, smell, see, interact with basically everything in our lives. But it's made up of many, many parts, and today we're going to be focusing on the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex is the outermost layer of the cerebrum. The cerebrum is the portion of the brain that's divided into two hemispheres. It makes up 80% of our brain's mass. The cerebral cortex itself spans over multiple lobes, such as the frontal lobe, the occipital lobe, the parietal lobe, and the temporal lobe. It also spans over both hemispheres, and it's responsible for a majority of the functions that we regard as what make us who we are, such as like our intelligence, or our personality, or motor skills, or language and planning and organization skills, and even our touch and sensory input. The cerebral cortex itself actually extends about 1.3 feet in space when you spread it flat on a surface, and it's about it's probably about 1.2 to 5 millimeters in thickness, depending on the location in the brain. It also contains roughly 20 to 23 billion nerve cells. But other parts of the cerebral cortex that are prominent include the motor cortex and the somatosensory cortex. The motor cortex is responsible for sending out signals to different parts of the body, such as like your hands, your eyes, your mouth, basically anything that performs a movement, while the somatosensory cortex actually receives the information from those things, such as like the touch of something. In between those areas are known as association areas, but those areas are really hard to map out, but we know they're responsible for higher level functions such as thinking. The unique part about the cerebral cortex is it's able to retain the property of plasticity. It's able to basically reroute neural connections and restore functions that were previously gone, or actually make use of unused parts of the brain, such as someone who's deaf. The auditory cortex will basically not go unused. The brain will actually reroute new connections and utilize the part of the brain that's no longer being used for another function. Without the cerebral cortex, our higher level functions such as learning or thinking or our motor skills or our personality traits would basically be non-existent. If we take a look at our guiding poster, there are two diagrams. If we take a look at our guiding poster, there are two graphics on the right-hand side. The first one is a graphic that displays the different locations of the lobes in the brain. It displays the frontal lobe, the occipital lobe, the parietal lobe, and the temporal lobe. And below that we have another graphic that actually shows the motor and somatosensory cortexes. The motor cortex basically is responsible for sending signals, while the somatosensory is responsible for receiving them. And the diagram actually shows you which parts of the body it sends and receives information from. And it's actually crazy to think that our brains allowed us to understand this video and to improve our knowledge on our brain itself.